In 1948, a white mineral powder was officially registered as a pesticide in the United States. It was so cheap, it only cost a few cents per use, could wipe out entire ant colonies in less than 10 days, and has been trusted by people since the 8th century. Ancient Tibetan traders called it borax. Today, most of us walk right past it on the bottom shelf of the grocery store. Why? Because the gardening industry makes over $20 billion a year, selling you expensive chemical sprays, synthetic fertilizers, and pest control products. Meanwhile, there's a $4 box that can replace most of them. Today, we're going to explore 25 borax gardening tips that corporations have worked hard to hide from you for decades. If you've ever gotten tired of spending hundreds of dollars on chemical bottles that stop working right after the first rain, pay close attention. This is where we find back that forgotten resourceful wisdom to build a more self-sufficient future. Do you remember the smell of fresh pine in your grandfather's workshop? In 2007, a research report from the USDA Forest Products Laboratory in Madison revealed a shocking truth. A solution of 93% borax can protect wood from termites and rot for 30 years. To do this, he would often dissolve 1 dilbite of borax in a gallon of hot water, adding a tablespoon of glycerin to help the solution soak deep into every wood grain. The image of him carefully brushing each layer onto raised bed frames or fence posts is still vivid in my mind. The rough feel of the wood absorbing that solution was proof of its durability. The industry wants you to spend $3,000 on periodic termite treatments every 5 years, or buy pressure-treated wood full of toxic chemicals. They forgot to mention study FPL-RP 655, because an $8 box of borax can do the same job for a lifetime. This silence isn't because borax doesn't work, but because it's too cheap to make a profit for corporations. When you protect your garden this way by yourself, you're taking back control from companies that just want you to depend on their products. Since the 8th century, Tibetan traders have carried a precious mineral on the backs of yaks across the winding Himalayas. They discovered a secret that modern pest control companies have tried to erase. Borax works best when combined with blackstrap molasses. Instead of using refined white sugar, Grandma would mix a tablespoon of thick, rich blackstrap molasses into the ant bait. The deep, complex scent of the molasses attracts ants from a much further distance than any artificial flavoring. You'll see the ants gather around the bait dish as quickly as if they'd found treasure. The reason this tip is banned from discussion is because of its incredible effectiveness. Molasses bait can wipe out a nest in just 5 days, twice as fast as white sugar. Corporations want you to buy a second or third round of bait, so they only use the bare minimum formulas. Making your own molasses bait at home helps you escape that cycle of buying over and over. Seeing the ant trails completely disappear in less than a week is the reward for the resourceful wisdom of past generations. Coddling moths used to be a nightmare for every apple orchard owner, leaving ugly brown tunnels through the core of juicy fruit. But, in a 1914 USDA Farmer's Bulletin, a simple solution was published only to be quietly removed from later editions after World War II. Grandpa used to mix a thick borax paste, like cream, and paint a wide band around the apple tree trunks in late winter. The image of that white powder band surrounding the old tree base, like a sturdy protective fence, is a beautiful memory. When the larvae wake up and crawl up the tree, they are destroyed right at this band before they can even touch a single leaf. The industry wants to sell you $15 pheromone traps, or sprays that must be used 7 times a season. A single borax application costs just pennies, and that's why this information no longer appears in modern advertising catalogs. They hide it because its absolute simplicity and effectiveness ruined the revenue model of regular chemical sprays. Walk into any garden center, and you'll see boron supplement bottles with fancy scientific names for $20. But look closely at the ingredients on the back. It's boron, the element that makes up 40% of that $40 borax box in your laundry room. Grandma knew that just half a teaspoon of borax dissolved in a gallon of water was enough to fix cracked tomatoes or flowers dropping off the vine. The feeling of holding the watering can and gently pouring the solution at the base of the plant in the early morning. Watching the blossoms turn into firm fruit is a simple joy. The industry has divided this knowledge, separating borax from its role as a fertilizer, so you have to buy two products instead of one. They exaggerate the risk of soil toxicity to make you afraid, when in reality, if you just measure with a level spoon like Grandma did, you'll have a bumper crop for almost zero cost. This is the clearest proof of how knowledge is twisted to serve profit. Whiteflies are tiny but tricky creatures. They have a waxy coating on their wings that makes most $18 sprays slide right off like water on a duck's back. Instead of standing back and spraying clouds of chemicals, Grandma would sit by her tomato plants using a soft cloth dipped in a weak borax solution to gently wipe the underside of each leaf. It was a time-consuming process, but it brought a strange connection to the garden. The cool feeling of the solution on your hands and the cleanliness of the leaves after wiping is something no machine can replace. This tip is ignored by the industry because it doesn't use up their products. It only asks for 15 minutes of your patience. While sprays only kill about 30% of adults, manual wiping cleans off eggs and nymphs too. Corporations don't like such thorough solutions because they need you to come back and buy another bottle of spray next week. Wiping leaves isn't just about killing pests. It's the careful tending that chemical companies can never sell you. Tired of weeds growing in the cracks of your concrete patio? Don't buy those sprays that need to be reapplied every month. Grandpa used to dissolve a cup of borax in hot water and pour it directly into the walkway cracks. Boron doesn't break down as fast as other organic chemicals. It stays in the soil and stops anything from growing for months, sometimes even a year. The sight of a walkway clear of weeds without having to bend down and pull every single one is a liberation. The chemical industry often uses this tip to scare gardeners, calling borax a soil sterilant. That's true if you use it in a vegetable bed. It's a disaster. But in a walkway, it's the perfect one-and-done solution for the season. They don't want you to know this because it cuts down on the sales of weed killers that need repeated use. Knowing where and where not to use borax is the wisdom that ads often skip, so you'll buy safer but less durable products. Powdery mildew can wipe out your pumpkin patch in a few days, leaving leaves looking gray like they're covered in ash. Grandma's recipe was simple. 1 teaspoon of borax and 1 tablespoon of cooking oil mixed into a gallon of water. Borax changes the pH on the leaf surface, creating an alkaline environment where fungus spores cannot survive. The cooking oil acts as a sticker, keeping the borax from being washed away by early morning dew. Companies want you to buy specialized $15 fungicide bottles that contain copper or sulfur. This tip has been used by Amish communities for centuries because it's safe and almost free. You should spray in the early morning before the sun gets too hot to avoid burning the leaves from the hot oil. Always test it on a few leaves before spraying the whole vine. Controlling fungus by changing the pH instead of using synthetic toxins is a step forward in sustainable gardening that the chemical industry never wants you to master. This is the biggest secret, twisted by the industry, to make you believe borax doesn't work. Have you ever mixed a really strong ant bait and saw them die instantly only to see a new swarm appear a few days later? That's because you broke the 1% discipline. If the concentration is too high, the worker ants are killed before they can carry the bait back to the queen. The nest is still there, and you have to go buy a new spray bottle. A 1% concentration is the golden number. Weak enough for the worker to survive the trip home, but strong enough to wipe out the whole colony from the inside. My grandma always used exactly 1 TSP of borax for 1 cup of sugar water or blackstrap molasses. She would soak this mixture into cotton balls and place them in bottle caps along the ant's path. Patience is key. In the first 48 hours, you'll see even more ants coming. Don't panic. They are calling their friends to get the gift. By day 14, the entire nest will collapse completely. The industry always pushes the stronger is better mindset, so that when you fail, they use it as proof to say homemade stuff doesn't work. The truth is, the USDA used to recommend this 1% concentration in old bulletins before being silenced by chemical companies who want to sell you instant kill sprays that lack long-term effectiveness. Rusty garden tools are often seen as trash, but in Grandpa's workshop, nothing was thrown away if it could still be saved. He had a special recipe to revive old pruning shears or a dull iron shovel. A thick paste made from borax and lemon juice. I still remember his 1979 Wagner cast iron skillet being saved after just one afternoon with this simple formula. The citric acid in the lemon chemically reacts to dissolve the iron oxides, rust, while the borax crystals act as a gentle abrasive and a binder to lift the rust cleanly off the metal surface. Grandpa would mix 2 parts borax with 1 part lemon juice into a thick paste, apply it to the rusty area, and let it sit for 15 minutes. After scrubbing it with an old brush, he always dried the tool completely and immediately to prevent the rust from coming back. Tool manufacturers want you to buy new stuff every season instead of maintaining the old, which is why they never mention borax's restorative powers in modern gardening manuals. Reviving a quality item from the past is the strongest act of resistance against the planned obsolescence of the consumer industry. Attacking a wasp nest with a 20 FT pressure spray is how ads usually describe it to make things look dramatic. But my grandpa had a much quieter way. He found their flight corridor, the fixed path the wasps fly back and forth between the nest and food. Instead of attacking the nest, he would sprinkle dry borax powder along that corridor or at the nest entrance for yellow jackets. The wasps would accidentally get the powder on their bodies, carry it back to the nest, and share it with the queen and larvae. Within a week or two, the entire nest would weaken and collapse without you ever having to stand closer than 10 feet. Companies sell pressure sprays because they bring in big sales and a feeling of powerful action. However, you absolutely must not use this method on honeybees or other beneficial pollinators. Always do it at night, when the nest members have settled in to ensure maximum safety. This is a lesson in observation and patience, using the opponent's habits to solve the problem without needing chemical violence. Spider mites breed so fast they often become resistant to pesticides after just a few weeks. Grandma had a surgical precision therapy. Use an extremely diluted borax solution, just half a teaspoon per gallon of water, to mist the underside of the leaves. Borax abrades the mites' waxy shell and causes them to dry out quickly. Mandatory note: you must use clean water to rinse the entire plant exactly 24 hours after spraying. If left too long, the salt buildup will burn your plant leaves. The industry uses this risk of leaf burn to label borax as dangerous. But the truth is, if you rinse it off, it kills spider mites better than any $15 specialty pesticide. Repeat this process every 5 to 7 days for 3 weeks to kill any newly hatched eggs. This meticulousness is a barrier to corporate profit, but it's a lifesaver for gardens under heavy mite attack. Do you remember your grandparents using this blue and white box in the garden? Leave a comment and tell me about your family's heirloom borax tips. Have you ever sprayed organic pesticides or foliar fertilizers and noticed they just clump up into drops and slide off the leaves? That's because of hard water. Water high in calcium and magnesium chemically binds with the spray ingredients, causing them to settle out and lose their effectiveness. Since phosphates were banned in dishwasher detergents in 2010, the effectiveness of cleaning and gardening solutions has dropped noticeably. My grandpa always added a tiny pinch of borax, about half a teaspoon, to every gallon of spray water. Borax acts as natural water softener, helping the active ingredients dissolve completely and stick to the leaves better. It creates a thin film covering the entire leaf surface instead of letting the medicine wash away. The industry wants you to buy expensive surfactants with scientific-sounding names instead of using a pinch of cheap borax powder from under the sink. This one little tip helps you double the effectiveness of every spray bottle without spending an extra dime on specialized additives. Be careful not to overdose to avoid turning your spray into a weed killer. Balance is the secret that corporations keep hidden, so you stay dependent on their exclusive products. Imagine juicy early-season strawberries, bright red under green leaves, but the next morning they're just mangled husks left behind by the slimy trails of snails. Many gardeners instinctively pour salt around, but my grandma didn't do that. She knew salt would permanently ruin the soil structure and kill the beneficial microbes working quietly underground. Instead, she used a magic circle of borax powder. The way it works is very subtle. Borax draws moisture from the snail's soft body through osmosis, just like salt. But because boron is a micronutrient, in small amounts, it's actually a nutrient for the plant rather than a poison. She would take a small jar and sprinkle a dry strip of borax, about half an inch wide, in a closed circle around the base of the plant, keeping it about 2 inches away from the stem. The image of that white circle surrounding the lush green vegetables like a symbol of quiet protection is a memory I can't forget. Commercial snail baits often contain bright chemicals that can poison birds and pets, while a strip of natural mineral powder from under the sink is already the perfect solution. The industry wants you to buy toxic bait pellets because that's how they maintain revenue. But they forget to mention that a simple strip of dry powder is enough to drive away these night thieves without harming your land. Never bring termites from the woodpile in the yard into your fireplace. That was Grandpa's life-saving warning every winter. Dry wood piles are a paradise for wood-eating insects, which can quietly migrate into your home structure through just one load of wood at the end of the year. Instead of using expensive wood preservatives with unpleasant smells, he would prepare a homemade borax solution to protect his wood pile. His recipe was 1 part borax and 8 parts warm water, stirred until the powder dissolved completely into a clear liquid. Before stacking the wood in the shed, he used a spray bottle to evenly coat the surface of the dry logs. When termites or carpenter ants started gnawing on the treated wood fibers, the borax would destroy the bacteria in their gut, making it impossible for them to digest cellulose, and they would soon starve in their own tunnels. This method is only effective when wood is stored in a dry, covered area, away from direct rain. Termite control companies often sell you maintenance packages worth thousands of dollars, but they never promote a prevention habit that is this cheap and effective. Extending the life of every piece of wood in the garden with a few cents of mineral powder is a testament to the resourceful wisdom of previous generations. Building self-reliance from the most basic ingredients without needing chemical corporations. When you see aphids covering your roses, your instinct is to spray to kill them. But aphids are often protected by a devoted bodyguard, ants. Ants herd aphids for their honeydew and will fight off any natural enemies. Grandma knew the best way to kill aphids was to destroy these ant farmers first. By using a 1% borax trap, you cause the entire ant colony to collapse. Once the ants aren't there to protect them, natural enemies like ladybugs will clean up the aphids for you completely for free. This is an ecosystem strategy the chemical industry wants you to forget. They want you to buy aphid spray today and ant killer tomorrow. Breaking this symbiosis with a pinch of borax is a smart, sustainable approach that corporations can't patent. The feeling of seeing ladybugs return to the garden and do the work for you is a wonderful connection to nature. Our grandmothers didn't spray chemicals all over the garden week. They drew lines. With just a squeeze bottle of dry borax powder, she would sprinkle a thin line around the outside of the garden beds. Any crawling insect, ants, slugs, or beetles would get the powder on their legs, dehydrating them and killing them before they could even touch the crops. The image of that white strip surrounding the lush green vegetables like a magic protective circle is unforgettable. This technique is ignored by modern experts because it doesn't require expensive pressure sprayers or complex chemical formulas that can cause resistance. A pound of borax for a few dollars can protect your whole garden all season. The industry wants you to believe you need a total chemical shield, but in reality, a well-placed line is enough. This simplicity is why this tip was pushed to the back pages of modern gardening books. The line between a tonic and a poison lies only in the measuring spoon. This was a hard-earned lesson I learned from an old recipe card from Esther Yoder, a woman who farmed 80 acres outside of Millersburg, Ohio, in 1926. On that card, she underlined the word level 3 times. Boron is an essential micronutrient to prevent hollow hearts in cauliflower and help tomatoes set fruit. But plants' tolerance threshold is extremely low. The lack of detailed dosage instructions in modern gardening materials is a tactic to make you feel that DIY borax mixing is too complex and risky. A level spoon holds about 5 g of borax, but if you use a rounded or heaping spoon, the amount can reach 12 quarterns, enough to burn all your plant roots instantly. Always use the back of a knife to scrape the measuring spoon flat, and never ever eyeball it. This precision is the barrier that prevents failure, helping you nurture your garden with understanding instead of the wrong guesses that corporations often use as a reason to force you to buy pre-mixed products. Ticks don't jump or fly. They sit on tall blades of grass with their front legs stretched out waiting for a warm body to walk by, a behavior called questing. Grandpa used to create a 3 ft wide buffer zone of dry borax powder along the edge of the lawn where it met the brush or woods. Ticks have soft bodies, especially in the larval stage, and will dehydrate the moment they touch the borax powder. Studies on borax and ticks are often limited in funding because the industry wants you to believe only expensive synthetic chemicals can protect your pets. Remember that borax is just one layer of defense. You still need to keep the grass short and clear away rotting leaf litter. Reapply the strip after rain to keep it effective. A small note: avoid sprinkling borax where children frequently play on the grass to ensure absolute safety. Building a natural physical barrier was Grandpa's way of protecting the whole family from tick-borne diseases at the lowest possible cost. Thrips are tiny black ghosts that suck plant sap and spread viruses. The biggest mistake gardeners make is only spraying the leaves while thrips hide their eggs deep in the soil to prepare for a new attack. Grandma used a double attack strategy. Drench the soil with a borax solution, 1 TSP per gallon of water, to kill eggs and nymphs underground. Then lightly mist the leaves. Most commercial pesticides only focus on the part you can see, to ensure you'll have to buy the next bottle when the new batch of bugs hatches from the soil. Extremely important warning. Borax is toxic to honeybees because it damages the protective wax layer on their bodies. Therefore, you are only allowed to do this in the early morning before 7 a.m. when pollinators aren't active yet. And absolutely do not spray on open flowers. This is a technique that requires the precision and ethics of a gardener. Protecting crops without harming our precious pollinating friends. Mice have an inherent grooming habit of always licking their fur and paws clean after moving around. In Grandpa's old sheds, which were full of grain and chicken feed, he never used risky snap traps. Instead, he sprinkled a thick strip of borax powder along the thresholds and openings. He called it a chemical threshold that made the mice run away in fear. This mechanism takes advantage of the mouse's foot-licking habit. When they crawl over the strip, fine particles stick to their feet. The feeling of the powder makes them uncomfortable, and they have to lick clean when they return to the nest. Borax entering the digestive system causes bloating and discomfort, making the mouse identify the area as unsafe, and they will actively leave. This method doesn't kill mice instantly, but is a quiet, deterrent strategy. Be sure to sprinkle the strip thick enough so mice can't jump over it, but keep it away from direct livestock feed. Mousetrap and poison bait companies want to sell you more dramatic and expensive solutions, but they often ignore these simple prevention tips. Grandpa's resourcefulness wasn't just about killing. It was about understanding the intruder's behavior to protect the family's treasures at almost zero cost. Old pots are often covered in black mold and white mineral stains from hard water, which can carry diseases to young plant roots. The garden supply industry always wants you to throw away old pots and buy new cheap plastic ones every season, but Borax will help you disinfect them thoroughly. Grandma always had a pot-soaking tub every spring, where she mixed half a cup of borax into 10 L of warm water. Soaking the pots in this solution for at least an hour changes the surface pH, killing mold spores and softening stubborn mineral deposits. The image of those pots being scrubbed clean and sun-dried after soaking, becoming shiny as new, was part of the preparation for the season. Extremely important note. After soaking, you must rinse the pots very thoroughly with clean water. If not rinsed well, the excess borax in the ceramic pores will change the pH of the new potting soil and poison sensitive young plants, a phenomenon called boron toxicity. The industry wants you to forget borax's disinfecting ability to push a new shopping cycle. But by keeping beautiful, durable ceramic pots, you are practicing thrift and respecting environmental resources in a way that corporations never encourage. Roses are the queens of the garden, but are extremely sensitive to black spot and powdery mildew. Instead of buying specialized chemical fungicide sprays for $30, my grandma had a much cheaper secret: borax. She would often mix 1 TLSP of borax and 1 TBSP of cooking oil into a gallon of hot water. Then let it cool and spray it on rose leaves in the early morning, while the dew hadn't fully melted. The mechanism here is very scientific. Borax changes the pH on the leaf surface, creating an alkaline environment where fungus spores cannot germinate or grow. Cooking oil helps the solution stick longer and increases penetration. Besides killing fungus, the small amount of boron soaking into the soil also helps roses bloom larger with thicker petals and deeper colors. Note: never spray when the outside temperature exceeds 30 degrees Celsius to avoid leaf burn. The industry always wants to keep rose care complicated and expensive by selling you dozens of different medicines. But they hide the fact that a box of powder under the sink can solve most of the problems, for this sensitive flower is the most sustainable way. This is one of the most impressive applications of borax I've ever seen. While companies making wooden stakes and fence frames want you to buy new ones every few seasons due to rot, a 2007 USDA study number FPL-RP 655 proved that borax can protect wood in direct contact with soil for 20 to 30 years. My grandpa applied this to all his strawberry support stakes. His recipe was to dissolve 1 milliliter of borax in a gallon of hot water, adding glycerin to help the solution soak deep into every fiber of the dry, untreated wood. He would dip the bottom part of the wooden stakes into the solution for at least 24 hours before driving them into the ground. The borax permeates the wood, creating an environment where rot fungus cannot breed and termites cannot digest the cellulose. A professional termite treatment can cost thousands of dollars, but his solution cost only pennies per stake. The lumber and termite service industry never wants you to master this knowledge because it ruins the business model based on material failure. Extending the life of every piece of wood in the garden is exactly how our grandparents built self-reliance, turning the garden into a lasting legacy without needing the constant intervention of expensive consumer products. And this is what this video has always been about. Why such an amazing product was pushed to the bottom shelf and almost erased from television. The answer lies in 1988. That was the year traditional borax brands, like 20 Mule Team or Boraxo, changed ownership and was sold to the Dial Corporation. Since that moment, a strange silence has fallen. All advertising for borax uses outside of laundry suddenly stopped. It's not because borax is dangerous. In fact, the EPA still classifies it as unlikely to cause cancer. It was erased because it's too cheap. A $4 box of borax can replace about $320 worth of specialized chemicals that a family buys every year. Multiply that number by 130 million American households, and you'll understand the scale of the number the chemical industry wants to protect. They have tightened regulations, even as in California new laws are trying to completely eliminate gardeners' access to this mineral. Knowing and using borax again today isn't just about saving money. It's an act of holding on to the resourceful legacy of our ancestors before everything is packaged into shiny plastic bottles costing 10 times their real value. This is the quiet freedom that wise gardeners always cherish. They used borax not because they were poor, but because they knew the true value of things. It's time we bring this wisdom back to our gardens. Ask your grandparents about this box. Surely they will tell you stories of resourcefulness that no modern books have. If they have another tip, leave a comment below. I read all of them. And remember, knowledge is never lost. It's just moved to where you stop looking. Now, you know where to look. See you all in the next journey to reclaim self-reliance. If these forgotten secrets have changed the way you look at the simple minerals in your home, please subscribe and like the channel. We are unearthing the history they tried to bury. Let's plant the seeds for a self-reliant future. The next hidden treasure will be opened soon.